welcome to this episode of the Digipod. My name is Aziz. Today I am joined by journalist Asma Shirazi, who is also a primetime anchor, and Shahzad Ghias, who is the host for the Pakistan Experience, one of the most watched Pakistani podcasts. Both of them, as a result of what happened in Pahalgam and then India's response, we've seen that first government of Pakistan accounts were social media accounts were restricted, and then another list emerged, which includes Asma, which includes Shehzad, also Dawn, and various other individuals and channels whose YouTube channels have now been restricted in India. I want to obviously to you that one, I mean, the fact that you are now on the list, clearly you have a significant viewership in India and you're reaching audiences there. But there's something that somehow you're following, state narrative that the Indian government, how did you find out other than the sort of the list? Did you get any notification from YouTube that your channels have been restricted? How is it that you came to know that you have been banned in India? Asma and then Shazad.
Yeah, thank you so much, Faria, and thank you so much for having me on your show for Dawn English. Yes, it was, frankly, I just got up and I received messages from India and Pakistan, from my friends, from my foes, from my viewers that you are banned. And, a few channels wanted my point of view that you are banned. So, what would you like to say? So, it was like a, bombshell on me while early morning. Opening your eyes and seeing this story that you are banned in India. And it's a big story. I was banned during Musharraf government in Pakistan, but never thought that I will be ever banned in India in future. So it was like very shocking. It was like very. I think I can't express my shock in words, but it was not expected at all. And yes, because my channel, it's not a very big channel. I occasionally do it. I did only three stories on Pahalgam after this incident. But the impact is, maybe they counted the impact, and my viewership of 20%, more than 20% of my viewership is from India, from Punjab, especially. And then our friends in media, they watch my show mostly to assess the political situation in Pakistan. So I think that is the main reason they restricted my channel. And then I went to my email. So there was an email in my account, and it was saying that you are restricted, and you because of the Home Ministry of India has requested to ban you or restrict you, and the national security concerns and something like that. So it was like quite amazing for me that once I was banned in Pakistan, and then just 2 years before, Faria, I was a national security risk in Pakistan, and I faced sedition charges here, and now in India. So I think now, I think it's a credit, I think, right now, because I'm receiving so much calls and messages from all over the Pakistan that they are showing solidarity, their love towards me. So what else I can say?
Shazad, have you also become a national security and public order risk, not just here, but now next door?
Absolutely. I also woke up finding out that I've become a national security risk. I doubt there's been a government in Pakistan that has not banned Asma Shirazi, but this is my first time on the rodeo, so I found it rather amusing. Similarly to Asma, I started receiving messages at night. I was being tagged in stories from fans in India who were in the middle of watching my podcast and were confused as to why the video has frozen all of a sudden, and they started getting error messages. So I had an inkling that something was happening, but I never thought I would be individually targeted. I assumed it was something across the board in terms of whether it's Pakistani YouTube channels or the internet altogether in India, which one can expect. I woke up to an email from YouTube, similar to Asma, which specifically said that the Indian government has specifically asked us to block your channel in India. And then the list emerged. ANI posted a list of about 16 channels, which was not exhaustive at all, because based on my conversations with friends, I'd found out other channels had received that email, which were not included in that original list. So it was rather amusing to see some of the leading news channels in Pakistan followed by our little podcast, because at least on that list, ours was the only podcast. So I did feel like Dawn, not the one that you're on, the one more in the vein of Amitabh Bachchan and Shah Rukh Khan. So all my stories also had that particular song of being like, Bada hi khatarnak hoon main. So I also became Dawn News with DON.
Why
Well
do you
said.
think this has happened? I mean, just your including what was the sense? Of course, whenever there is, we understand the seriousness and of what has happened, right? And there were human lives, and of course, wherever this happens, there is a sense of, I mean, it should not, a human life should not be lost, right? And then comes the whole who's done it, who's responsible, where do you pin accountability? But then we see it here also in conflict situations where it's a war of narratives, and there's an official state narrative, and then there are citizens holding their government to account, which happens plenty here as well. And we see that critics are challenged. And here, but there seems to be, in a way, restricting what is coming from, there might be critical accounts that may be coming into India. And so, what kind of analysis or what do you think has prompted this by the Indian government, particularly going after particular accounts and also, I mean, YouTube? It's not just about music, but YouTube, really, social media narratives.
Uh, should I answer or asking me? Yeah, actually, I just thought about it, and there was a thought process after this news that we are banned over there. And as Shehzad said, that it was not, I mean, his channel or mine channel and a few others, these are not big channels in any private channels. These are not in millions, actually. There are millions I mean, big channels also with millions of views in Pakistan. But why did they ban us? So that's a big question. So it's my research or my, I think, my opinion that why the answer to me, my question and my answer to me was, they restricted us because they just wanted to restrict the information and access to information of Indian media, because mostly Indian media, they, I mean, in my case, the friends of mine and various TV channels, they watch me, and to get the idea from Pakistan that what is happening over there. So it was the main thing. They blocked us, they restricted us because they don't want their journalists to access the information or collect the information from Pakistan and correct information, actually. Because in my 3 episodes, if you can go and watch my channel. I just ask questions to Indian government, and very genuine and reasonable questions. We are not warmongers. We are not, I mean, increasing tension. We are rather peace lovers. I've been a very active part of SAFMA. I'm part of SWAM, South Asian Women in Media. And, we always talk about peace and sense in the region. But this was, I mean, amazing that I asked question about Pahalgam, how this happened, when this happened, why this happened, and basic questions, 5 Ws of the incident, the basic, very basic questions, and why Indus Treaty was like that was done, and they claim that they are going to suspend this treaty, which is not practically possible. And I challenge the practicality of the decision by the Indian government. So it was, and then my understanding to the issue was that is purely or mainly one of the political reasons, because Bihar elections are going on. And I immediately said on the very next podcast or my vlog that they are taking this decision because of the I mean, they are in trouble. Modi Sarkar is in trouble in Bihar. So that could be one of the reasons. So that was the thing which I think made them annoyed, and they blocked this. But I'm still wondering that why only few of us, I mean, few private channels, by name, Indian government has blocked these channels. Maybe still we are unable to gauge and understand the situation on their part, or this is the basic reason that they are banning us. Just because people do not take the collect the perfect, or I mean the opinion from Pakistan, or the information from Pakistan actually. So they have blocked the way to collect information, to access information from Pakistan. For the other point of view, they don't want to show the other side of the story from Pakistan.
I'm sure when it happened, all the Faria Azizes in India woke up banging their heads against the wall and got an extra coffee because they would have to go to courts to try and find rhyme and reason as to why it happened. I think we assume that our government and our bureaucracy is uniquely inept, but in my experience, governments around the world make such faux pas. It's not like Pahalgam was an anticipated event. So probably they're also scrambling for a reaction. They're probably scrambling to get the public sentiment on their side, not only do something which they might be doing on the intelligence front, whether that's counterintelligence operations, whether that's something even worse, which might happen in Pakistan soon, but something needs to be seen as well, just to quell the public anger. So it seems like one of those random ideas which probably was thrown around in a meeting and they hastily put together a list, so much so the list, even though the YouTube link specifically specified for my channel says the Pakistan experience, the name written right next to it is the Pakistan reference. So the fact that somebody did not even go through a spell check or just checking what the name of the channel is before compiling that list shows that l- it was not a well thought out reaction to the terror incident itself. It was a hastily put together list. There were a lot of sports channels. So we can assume and try and find a grand design. But much like the list Trump came out with in terms of the tariffs, and they had to backtrack that, I do believe this list was hastily put together. There are a lot of sports channels. So if it's about misinformation, or whether it's about fake news, or whether it's about specifically to do with that terror incident, I think the only terrorism that sports channel are talking about is Babar Azam's batting. So I don't see why you would include all of them in this list as well. And if the idea is कि भाई सबसे ज़्यादा revenue जहाँ जा रहा है, I don't think and I don't want Rohit Hayat and Zulfi to hate me for saying this, but I don't think any channel is watched more in India, any Pakistani channel, at least more than Coke Studio. Not to wake up tomorrow and get them to ban Coke Studio as well, because the print did an interview with me immediately after it happened where I specified as to people like Zaid Hamid were not banned. People like Zaid Hamid who spew absolute hatred and drivel against the Indian people that would embarrass most Pakistanis. Those people are invited on Indian national media to portray a certain image of Pakistanis. So, God forbid, if tomorrow India was to retaliate, they don't want you to feel sympathy for Pakistan. They don't want you to see Fawad Khan, Rahat Fateh Ali Khan, Atif Aslam when they think of a Pakistani. They want the Indian audience to think of Zaid Hamid when they view a Pakistani, or they want somebody who's holding a sword on at the border, waiting to murder somebody to guarantee paradise for them. So podcasts like ours, channels like Asma Shirazi, which not only provide information but also show a face of Pakistan in which the average Indian can see themselves and be less likely to hope or pray or create public sentiment for a reaction such that civilians are targeted. I think whether it's banning cricket matches or it's banning our channels, severing that cultural connection creates those public sentiments. So we might be entering dangerous territories with a decision like this.
You're right that it is supposedly the non-jingoistic narratives, right? Or the people who are there, or the channels that have made the list, which it doesn't really compute why exactly. But as Asma also mentioned, there is this, I mean, and Shahzad, you rightly said that we think that it's only sort of unique to us when, whether it's censorship or stifling of speech or randomly blocking of websites and all of that. But it is a regional trend, particularly in South Asia. There's a lot of talk about digital authoritarianism as well. And also, people are turning to social media. We've seen what's happened in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, and so how social media was harnessed as well. And the curbs and the laws, and just generally what is happening. How do you see this going forward? Because, of course, in terms of what happens between Pakistan and India, and also the people to people relations, those are also, as you also mentioned, there's music, there's exchange of culture, there's cricket, there's so many things. And Asma, you also mentioned that you've been part of groups which also promote those kind of ties, and you need it more than ever at a time like this, when there is strife, when there is, I mean, both places there is a problem with terrorism as well. And these are the people to people connections, and social media is one of the ways, but then that too now clearly is being limited. And so while it may, I mean, what could be the possible impact of the social media restriction? Because like we've gone through in our experience recently, that if you're restricting it locally, those who have resources and access to VPNs, sure, they will be able to access, but some people may not have it. And so there is that divide that will then spring up.
Yeah, you're right, because I think this kind of censorship, it's always raises questions. And, as long as India is concerned, we always heard, and, we have read that the oldest and the oldest democracy in the world, So, but realities are different, Right now, we are living in authoritarianism, rather fascism, and the whole region is suffering from that. But India is, they are exposing themselves. It's not a rhetoric, really. We know the struggle of Pakistani journalists and Pakistan journalism is completely different. And when we compare it with India, they have got the freedom of expression by from their constitution since beginning. They did not struggle at all. Now it's completely state controlled media, actually. And we have experienced in Pulwama also, when we raised questions, they were used to say our foreign office, I mean their journalists, they were saying like this, our state is saying like this is our state's narrative. So we were used to ask them, what is your investigation, what do you say? Because we challenge our establishments. We ask them in Jafra Express incident very recently, we ask questions from our state and government, that where were you, that there is a security lab, something like that. But Indian journalists and their TV channels, their newspapers, I'm sorry, majority of them, they do not ask questions from their government. They run the narrative driven, I mean state driven narrative, they carry, and they use the terminology even given by them. And you'll be amazed that we were in SOM India, and I'm telling you this story because it is already published, so I can share it with you. That in SOM India, in regional chapter, there is a WhatsApp group, and we were discussing this thing, and we left afterwards. Pakistani journalists, but they took that story that we left the group, and they published it in the print. The I mean the publication, like the print is publishing a story which is against the norms, ethics and values. So it's like jingoism, as you said, that is going on. They are just trying to. They are not putting right questions to their governments. They're only very few who are asking questions to the government, but rather they are driving their narrative, government's narrative, towards putting it in front of the world, and not without reason, without questions. The problem is that we ask questions because we are trained like this. We have suffered, we have experienced a lot, we have struggled against dictatorships, we have faced fascism, we are still in censorship. So we ask questions. This is against the law. If you are living somewhere and you are not asking question to your government, where were you, where were the armed forces, why that happened, where is the security labs, and where did you lack? So these are the main questions. So I think the basic thing is the reasoning is the problem. Reasoning is a problem, and that challenges whether it's authoritarianism, or it's fascism, or any kind of or martial laws. So reasoning is the big problem, I think.
Censorship is a lived reality day in, day out, whether it's through dictatorships, hybrid plus, whatever you want to call it, the way that we've been defining this, right? And social media has now become, because there's similar critique that Asma is saying of the perhaps Indian media is what the critique is in Pakistan of mainstream, as we tend to call it, of channels, for instance, or even print, where there is more control. And so whether it's, everybody's getting the same memo, we've seen all of that, press releases have been reproduced, etc. So social media then becomes the only avenue where people are airing. But of course, there are consequences to that. What do you see going forward? I mean, in terms of what is happening there, similarities here, and then going forward, sort of the long-term impacts, because the one thing that does stand out is that there is the element of corporations, because where they're geographically based, and then you're online, but then even that space is not entirely free, because in a geographic location, for instance, India, now you've been restricted. Oftentimes, we see similar requests going from the Pakistan government as well to channels. Those, companies, those sometimes are complied with, sometimes they are not. And this is going to be another reality where there's another layer of corporate censorship, or whatever you want to call it, that also now impacts your reach, what you're able to express.
I mean, in terms of the corporate impact, it is going to be minimal. It's not something that we should particularly focus on. Actions always have unintended consequences. As the famous quote goes, democracy dies in the dark. When you take such draconian measures, the repercussions of those reverberate a lot more than the individuals who are involved. Dawn leaks happened, Dawn survived, but the impact that that had on print journalism and journalism in general has survived a decade later. A decade later, the experience of Dawn Leaks is a lived reality every single day of every single news organization in the country. So when these draconian measures happen and there's a culture of silence around it, not to undermine anybody on the left or anybody in India who's critical of the government for these actions, but the general culture of silence or support, which we've popularly seen on social media, where accounts with millions of followers are openly celebrating this as a victory for India, whereas they should be looking into the mirror and questioning how their freedoms are being curtailed or how free speech is being curtailed in India. It's, I'm not undermining people who've been critical. If we look at Pakistan as well, there's been a lot of criticism of arresting Maharang Baloch. But the fact that there's a general culture of silence that has emboldened the state, the message that the state will receive from that is we are free to go a step further. So in terms of the long term impact, there are still lines of communication. There's still people Asma Shirazi can call and potentially have on her television show. How comfortable will those people in India be coming on my podcast? How comfortable will those people be coming on Asma's show, coming on Dawn's show? It's not just going to hurt the Indian audience, it's also going to hurt the Pakistani audience because we're not going to get their perspective, they're not going to get our perspective, and these echo chambers that these political parties have, they will reproduce, and the narratives that they want to sell will uncritically be consumed by the masses, and what that leads to will be even more draconian measures. Right now, it's Pakistani channels being targeted. Tomorrow, it could be creators who've appeared on Pakistani news media or Pakistani content channels, podcasts, or write for Pakistani publications. If they're going to be arrested, if they're going to be FIRs against them, will we see a reaction in India? I don't think so. And that is the message being sent to the Indian government that you're free to go even further. And then it's dangerous territory, as I said.
Because I mean, also, it's irrespective, even when this happens here, and those who criticize, and oftentimes, Shahzad brought up the example of Marang as well. And anytime there's anything in Balochistan and you are critical, one, obviously there's a silencing, but you're also tagged immediately, right? Here as you're a raw agent, you're this, that, and the other. But then similarly, this very same people are criticizing or calling into question certain state narratives that the Indian government is now putting out, right? And so that's essentially where you draw the line, where it's principle-based journalism. You put out those questions, you ask irrespective. How much room do you feel, given where this how we are proceeding, both countries, in terms of freedom of expression and censorship and state overreach? Where do you see this going in the future?
Actually, I think I've written about this a lot, and since last 2 years, I'm writing. Rather, since 5 years, I'm writing that we are living in an era where everything is limited. I mean, we are experiencing limited democracies. We are experiencing limited access to information. Though we have a lot of tools in our hands to get information, but all are limited. All have checks, and there is no balance. At least we are unable to create a balance. Actually, I mean, in this environment, when we have a lot of tools to get information, but balancing the information is a big question for everyone. But as I said that limited democracy, limited freedom of expression, limited the freedom of like in Palestinian issue, you can see. I mean, I have experienced my YouTube channel got restricted before also, not received an email, but reach was hit because I discussed Palestinian issue. I stood with Gaza, and I highlighted the humanitarian issue over there. So it's like these all are questions on international level right now, that whether we have full freedom of speech, we have full access to freedom to move. You have seen there are many examples I can quote. The On Palestinian issue in Western countries, you have seen people, they got arrested, they got deported. They were punished, and Harvard University experienced a very different thing very recently on Palestinian issue. So you can we can't say that we are having freedom of speech or free democracies in all over the world. Yes, in new living reality, we have to face all these things, and this is the era where authoritarianism or fascism is getting another shape. So how to create that environment that we can express ourselves? In Pakistan, we have experienced for so long. I mean, we have faced martial laws, abrogation of constitution, freedom of speech. We fought for that, we struggled for that, we got punishments on that. But even then, we still facing this speaker not, law. But even then, we create that environment. We know how to express ourselves in democracies and in dictatorships and in fascism. But India does not know. As Shehzad said, that they at right now they are banning us, and they are clapping, they are celebrating it. But the time will come, they will face this remedy for themselves in their country. Then democracy will be questioned, and even now they are not living in an ideal democracy at all. So I think that this challenge is big, and we should create opportunities for the people to at least with checks in ourselves, not with the self censorship, but with checks in ourselves, how to express, how to report, how to highlight all these issues in our region, in our country, in the whole world. I think this is the big challenge. Even though we have freedom to access to information, but we are limited, and we are checked by everyone right now. And I'm just remembering that 1984 novel by George Orwell, that one big brother is sitting everywhere, which is watching us, and he's controlling us somehow, somewhere. It's happening.
Your final remarks, and obviously, as Asma also said, the myth of global freedoms and large democracies we're seeing is bursting, and whether it's through corporate silencing, in the sense that your posts get shadow banned or restricted, or the reach is restricted, or it's your channel. So either it's as a result of government requests, or then it's corporate policy. Where do you see this headed, especially at a time where conflict is on the rise globally? And more you need people to people contact, but also challenge official narratives.
I think this exclusivist, xenophobic rhetoric that gets you votes from certain communities through populist politics, it ends up hurting the country at large. I mean, if we look at sports, you'll notice that all of our ex-cricketers are highly critical of the Pakistan cricket team while lavishing praises on Virat Kohli or Rohit Sharma. Part of it is their opinion, part of it is them being conscious of the fact that a large portion of their audience enjoys when Azam is being abused and when Virat Kohli is being praised, and when they're being told that Virat Kohli is the king and Babar Azam is the worst thing that has ever happened to Pakistan cricket. So that Indian audience sort of also controlled the narrative about sports in Pakistan. And I'm sure it was similar in politics in Pakistan as well. Now that they've removed that Indian audience altogether, so that lever of soft power that they potentially had to control the narrative and have that exchange of information, they've lost that as well. And even people that were blamed as being raw agents or being rather pro India, they've come out being highly critical of India and criticizing their policies after their channels were targeted as well. It's the same with the US, where people who've gone to the US have sort of come up with a different narrative about America than they might have had in terms of their anti-imperialist policies, right? Even Maulana Ghazi of Lal Masjid went to the US and had a great experience there and made friendships, surprisingly. Now, with deportations, now with people being scared to go to academic conferences, I know of people who've backtracked from academic conferences and scholarships and fellowships because they're afraid they might be deported the moment they land in America. So these things get you populist votes, these things get you a few free likes on social media and the jingoistic chest thumping support, but in the long run it hurts your country's interests. And as the country gets more draconian, the hawkish people might celebrate, but like Asma said, if you first don't speak out, eventually when they come for you there won't be anybody left who will speak out for you.
On that note, thank you, Asma, and thank you, Shahzad. We look obviously on with concern as things develop, and obviously globally, we're experiencing, the freedoms and the protections that existed or as we knew it are being eroded, especially in a more sort of populist, as a result of populist narratives, whether we see what happens in the elections, etc. But at the end, it does come back to haunt you if you don't stand up. And I'm also reminded of, Asma Jahangir, who had, fought the case when Altaf Hussain was banned. And that is something that, popular sentiment was, well, absolutely, he should be banned because of what he was saying. But again, the banning, the action in itself is something that was criticized because then it will not differentiate or discriminate between who gets the axe next. And that exactly is what is at stake over here. Thank you very much, Asma and Shahzad, for joining us
Thank
on this.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.